Hello, and welcome to the A.D.H.Deep-Dive, the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund. I'm eating a piece of buttered banana bread as comfort food before I apologize to you for having been a big, dumb dummy. I don't know what happened with the externally recorded camera audio. Here come the dogs. I'm sorry about the jingling. This is a little prologue before a fantastic episode with Emma Sheridan. I just wanted to preemptively say that the audio was a little messed up for the first, 2/3 of this. Not in an unlistenable way. It's just going to be a little bit noisy. Had to boost the audio. Had to clean up some of the noise in the back. Regardless, this is a fantastic episode of which I've postponed hundreds of times. So the guilt I felt when I thought that this episode would also have to be scrapped because of audio purposes, that drove me wild. Sorry for this jingling. Judah's just running in circles around me right now. She's got a lot of energy. Whatever. Screw it. Thank you for joining the A.D.H. Deep Dive. If I didn't say it, it's the show that's not about ADHD, but is filled with proof it exists. My name is David J. Mund, and I'm joined this week by Emma Sheridan. So let's get to the episode. That way it just doesn't translate a lot of that.
Okay.
So on that note, you've done a podcast before.
I have.
You are one of 2 episodes that I've shot fully,
Okay.
edited fully, got ready to release, and went, David, you didn't shut up that whole time. And so, for just personal reasons, I ditched it. I would like to publicly state for the record, that was no reflection on Emma's performance in the podcast. There was a lot of things I didn't know that I was very wrong about. For starters, well, whatever. I'm already doing... Hello!
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We've tried to sit in silence for 15 minutes while I set this thing up. No, it's on you. What were you holding back?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember. That's the problem.
I know.
Oh no, I do remember. This is so dumb. There's just a meme I've been meaning to make about the train.
I want to talk about memes.
Okay.
Hit me.
So do you remember that dream that Quinn had the blue light and you were dancing in front of it?
Yeah.
The waving.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of that scene from SpongeBob. That's Squidward.
Yes.
I just think that would be a wonderful CapCut template to make.
We'll talk about it in a
Yeah.
second, but there was a scene in the show that we recently did where there's a lot of blue light being cast among walls, and it looks kind of wavy and gives this weird omnipresent feeling. And one of the actors in the show had a dream that the light went out. So in order to keep the immersion going, we set up a separate blue light so that I could stand in front of it and wave my arms like this and cast wavy shadows.
Yeah.
And that would be the workaround. He had a dream about that.
Yeah, and there's that scene in SpongeBob where there's the talent show and Squidward goes to do this interpretive dance. And there's a scene where he's doing the wave, and I just thought, man, I really just want to superimpose that over that footage you shot of the blue light, because I think it'd be a perfect representation, but I realized I don't know how to do that.
I also just had, this is the thing that I did in the last episode, as I just panicked about things that happening in the real time. I thought for a quick second that I was drinking your chai, because I reached back, I was like, oh shoot, I drank my chai, and now I'm drinking Emma's chai. How was your chai?
My chai was delicious, thank you.
Okay,
Did
good.
You got a chai with espresso?
I got a chai with espresso.
Okay, wonderful, good choice.
Because clearly, at the start of every podcast, I need as much caffeine as possible. I need to be as dissociated as possible. That's not true. There's, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to at least, while recording the notes. Yeah, so what? This is back up. I want to look at some notes here.
Yeah.
I want to start about a quick note that you can't look at.
Okay.
These are not your notes. This is just our backup audio.
Okay.
Something, and we'll get into the show, and we'll get into kind of how you and I know each other a little bit more.
Sure.
But one thing I did not know about you is that you are a plant person in some regard.
Yeah.
And I found that after something I have not been able to stop thinking about once I realized it, that I was mansplaining plants to you for an hour. Yeah, you came over to do video work with me
Yes.
on the video that we did for Valediction, which again we'll talk about in a little bit. But then we were like going around looking at the plants that I have in the room, and I was like, this is a this, and it's gonna do this, and this is a this, and something you should know about this. And then you're like, yeah, I have many of these. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
no.
No, it was great. I loved it. There were some plants I'd never seen before. I want to hear about your plants. It was fantastic. I didn't feel mansplained too. It was good.
Well, upon reflection, I was like, I don't know, I get really hyped about showing people plants.
Yeah.
Because like, something that's actually hidden now that I wonder why I did this in the meantime. Maybe this is a moment of reflection on that. I had a video called Plants,
Okay.
a story about growth,
Okay.
which I made. This is before the podcast. I was making videos on my YouTube channel to kind of talk about real life things, and I didn't think about a podcast as a way to do that.
Sure.
So I was making creative videos about ways to process things in my life. And I got my first plant, and then I very quickly saw how my like obsessive tendencies or like my like addictive qualities could quickly turn that into a problem. Because when I got my first plant, I knew very quickly I would have too many plants and
Okay.
be overwhelmed by it.
Sure.
So I was like trying to draw some analogy between it's okay, I can take care of this one plant and make it the best, most beautiful, like luscious plant ever. And I can just focus on that for a while. I don't need a bunch of plants. And then that plant died. And I very quickly like, fuck everything. I need more plants. I need to make less videos. I need to make a podcast. So all I'm saying is very quickly I knew I was going to be obsessed with plants.
Okay, is the obsession like, I know these are going to wither and die in Home Depot and I need to rescue them all? Or was it I like to care for the thing? Or what was it about plants that you're like, this is going to really be an obsession?
I don't know, other than it started with flowers. I really liked flowers.
Yeah.
And that was like the truth is, post-pandemic, or during the pandemic, during the pandemic I was doing a lot of mushrooms. that was
Okay.
And I fell in love with flowers for whatever mystical, magical reason. And then those die very fast.
Yeah.
That was annoying to me. Like, not just for a financial thing, but like I don't know, when you get a like living thing that you like, whether it's like a pet or a plant or a person, if it dies, that hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts.
In varying degrees, of
Yeah.
course, between the plants and the people, but
And we'll find a transition somewhere, but there is an art to saying goodbye.
You said the thing.
I said the thing. We'll talk about it. But like, yeah, there's a very real sense of like, the flowers were dying, and I needed flowers that lived longer. So it started with a big, pretty plant. And then it was like, plus when I moved out here, I moved in with, God love him, but the guy I initially moved in with was kind of a mental, that was already a mean way to put it. But like, just didn't have it quite as together.
Sure.
And I needed a place that I felt like was totally removed from the house, that felt like a living place. And so then, yeah, my obsession quickly spiraled out of control. Let's talk about your plants.
Wait, first I gotta ask, were you ever an orchid guy?
Orchid is the only thing I have not really like given myself permission to explore.
Okay.
Sorry. My piercing keeps coming unattached, and yesterday it fell out. And so I've got this like freak out, like, oh, is it still in my nose?
It's definitely still in your nose.
We're good.
Yeah. Orchids. I do feel that way though. I feel like they're impossible to take care of, and I feel bad because I feel like I see these orchids in Home Depots and like, you guys are just gonna. It's like it's like beta fish, right? Like I feel like they're kind of given to people as like, and no one knows how to take care of them quite right, and then it's not to compare an orchid to an actual living like creature. But you know,
if you view it in that way, and you happen to do a lot of mushrooms during the pandemic, then they kind of are. Because when I walk past a Meijer or a Walmart and like I see the display of fish, and I'm like, what
I
is
feel so bad.
Like, these are not being loved or cared for, regardless of like if you think it's just a fish or just a plant. Like, it is clearly not where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Like, those types of stores are for groceries, apparel, and knickknacks, not like living beings.
Creatures. Yeah.
And like, you know, if they could, they'd sell like cats and dogs there. There would be like a Walmart, like aisle 17 would be for like pets in cages, but we allow it with fish and plants for some reason, which is fine. Whatever. Maybe I am agreeing with you that maybe the comparison is a little extreme.
If there's a step, it's a step up. Right?
It's a step.
Like, yeah.
Right. Well.
But anyway, all that to say, I had an orchid and it died. But it wasn't a quick death.
All that to say,
it was a slow death because
the slow death.
It was a slow death, and I tried so hard because I have this app. Shameless plug for Planta, the app. It's fantastic.
Okay. Does it work?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It didn't work for the orchid, but it did make the orchid's death long and slow and painful over the course of a couple of years. For the most part, yes, it does work, and I've really been impressed. I think if you keep it really accurate as to what kind of pot you have it in, how much sunlight it gets,
right.
What the airflow is like, it does a really good job.
I get worried about it because I am susceptible to believe that an app is telling me what it needs, and then I could be just like, it's just sucking my data, the app,
okay,
like it's, there's so many plant identifier, what does your plant need apps that I'm like, not all of them can be right. So which one is? And I have no evidence to back it up. That's why I'm asking, does it work?
Yes, I've only lost three plants where I think I was following the app's instructions and it still died, of 15 or 20 plants.
Well, there's also sometimes nothing you can do.
Which is so sad.
Sucks.
It's so sad.
It sucks.
I do feel like a failure. I feel bad because you have to move it in the app to the plant graveyard. And
No!
It's so depressing.
No, the app this is let us know that your plant died.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
Quick transition into the travel side of things. Something I just remembered. We both recently reobtained our wallets.
I did not lose my whole wallet.
Oh, you didn't lose your whole wallet?
I lost just the
you
driver's license. I lost.
I lose just
it. Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah, thanks.
Tell me about
David.
that. When did you lose it? And then...
Oh, God. Yeah, so this has never happened to me before. But I was traveling to the Grand Rapids airport, and I'm normally really good about, phone, wallet, keys, whatever, check it all as soon as I get through security. And I'm not quite sure where I lost it. Originally, I thought I might have lost it in a different airport, but when I was on the way from Grand Rapids to Los Angeles for the show, I was having a bad week. I was having a bad couple of days. It had nothing to do with the show. It was just, some life stuff, as you're well aware.
Sure.
And I get to the rental car place, which we were very much depending on. And
the recollection of the panic in that moment.
And I finally got there. I have 2 suitcases full of props, plus my own small suitcase and a backpack. I'm also in this heavy winter coat and a hat and a scarf because I knew the desert was going to be freezing, but LA was a perfectly reasonable temperature. So I'm I'm hot, I'm sweaty, my arms hurt because I'm lugging way too much. I'm just there's a bunch of life stuff going on. I'm having a time, but
you don't know yet.
I don't know yet.
Right.
Keeping positive though, because there's no unsolvable problems, and that was my motto through the whole week. But I finally get to the rental car place, and the guy's like, okay, you're good to go. I just need to see your driver's license. And I'm like, no problem. This is the one thing I've got on lock. And so I whip out my wallet, and it's not in the pocket I normally put it in. I'm like, okay, that's okay. Maybe things got a little bit chaotic. It's lumped in with some other, cards or, my health insurance card, whatever.
Already that moment, sorry to step on your toes.
No, you're good.
I wouldn't have gone there. I would have immediately been like, I'm fucked. Everything is destroyed. Oh no.
I didn't.
Good for you. Good for you.
I did not have the freedom to let myself go there.
Right. This is not.
Because that would have been
projection.
The end. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, and so I'm looking, and at this point you start to be a little embarrassed, right? Because I'm already kind of travel gross, and I'm rifling through my stuff, yeah, man, just wait a minute, I got it. I did not got it. Max is under the table. Sorry, my dog is currently warming my feet.
It sounded like a belly growling, and then I was like, oh wait, yeah, he's down there.
Yeah, he just went ugh.
Yeah.
Which
this
is
is
valid.
I hope it picks it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just right under here.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, continue.
And I'm like, okay, no, I don't, it's not right here, just give me a minute, I'll check my backpack, I'll check my pockets, and they're like, okay, yeah, no worries, and I did check immediately. I'm like, hey, is there any way I could show a picture of my ID? And he's like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, no,
was it a firm,
put him on the spot. Was it a firm no, ma'am?
He was very kind. Well, and I wasn't, being forceful about it because I was at their mercy, right?
Sure.
And he was like, nah, we don't really do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's okay. So he kind of, goes to go, help some other people. And I'm at this point, like, my jacket's off, like, all the pockets are, like, flipped inside out, like, my backpack is disassembled, and it's like weird shit. Excuse me, sorry. Stuff in my bag. I'm sorry.
If you're worried about it for you, I understand. I've sworn like 8 times. You're good.
There's like shit all over the place, like for my backpack, and it's like weird stuff, right? Like props. And it's was this woman unpacking in this parking garage, and like
for clarity's sake, props. MP3 players, are these in your?
Oh, it was like the mask and the headdress and like a wig. It was like all sorts.
So
of
like objectively weird looking things, not even just the electronics, the boxes and boxes of electronics are a whole separate thing. This is like costume stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, continue.
And so at this point they come back over, and I'm trying not to be too pathetic, right? Like I'm trying not to cry, because this is kind of like the needle that broke.
Again, I would be crying right now. Yeah. I would be like, I'm sorry, hard time.
And so I'm like, I don't think I can find it. I'm like, it's not your guys' fault. Like, I'll take my stuff out of the car.
I'm sorry, I missed that part. The rental car's already there, ready to...
Yeah, so I used Kite, which I had a really good experience with, ultimately.
Okay.
You have to, like, they give you this credit to Uber, and you have to, like, Uber to a secondary location from the airport. Oh. So I had to, like, go from the LAX, like, Uber place to this random parking garage where you, like, go up to the 6th floor, and then they, like, have a bunch of cars there that they kind of check you in for. So I'm already at this, like, secondary location.
Are people waiting behind you?
No.
That is another level of, like, I am now not just annoying this person who, like, sure, maybe gets it, but now I'm, like, holding up everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he did at some point. He came over and was like, hey, like, other people are going to come and start, like, getting their cars, and we need to check this one out if you can't take it. So, of course, I was like, okay, no, absolutely. Like, I'll take my stuff out of the car. So I get the suitcases out.
I think you texted me at this point, right?
I did. I sent you a text saying, because you were getting in, like, 5 hours later.
Yep.
I'm like, David, I think we're going to have to do a rental car. In your name, of course, like, it'll be my credit card, but I don't know
so funny.
that we have any other option
because
here.
That's what I see before I go into the sky. I'm like, you gotta put a rental in my name? I don't know that. Like, there was no context for me. I was like, I didn't understand the whole you lost your ID thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy.
Sorry. Conveniently left that out.
No, yeah.
And I was also like, at this point, it was also just the inconvenience of, we had stuff we needed to do in those 5 hours, like some last minute stuff that I'm like, okay, we can, pick XYZ up in LA. We can print XYZ in LA. There's no reason I need to fly with these things. I'm like, okay, those 5 hours are gone. That's lost. And then also I'm like, how am I going to fly home? Mm. And so it's at that point, the fleet manager had come over, and I when I mentioned, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to fly home. And my voice started to break a little bit, and I started to cry. And I'm like, but it's okay. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, I'll see if I can get my passport mailed to me.
Look, just to be clear, sorry, again, stepping on the toes, objectively, this sucks.
Yeah.
But knowing that it's okay makes me laugh at it.
No, it is funny in retrospect. And so he had come over to let me know, hey, it's actually okay if you want to, put your stuff in, like, one of our cars that needs to be cleaned still, and then you can go and, like, go to a Starbucks or whatever. And I'm like, you're amazing.
Already so cool.
And then I did start to cry because I was touched. So, and
that might have just been what done it. That did it for
so
you.
I started to cry, and then he walked away, and so then I'm like calling, back home, being like, hey, like, can you, mail my passport out here? Which, spoiler alert, it didn't get there in time for my return flight, so that
so it wouldn't have worked.
Still in LA.
Yep.
And the return thing was I made it home, but that was a really interesting experience. But I gotta give a shout out to Carlos, the fleet manager.
I was gonna say, do you know the man's name?
I will never forget it. Yeah, Carlos, the fleet manager in LAX for Kite. Because I must have looked so sad and so pathetic. Because he comes back over and he's like, you know what? We don't need to make your day worse. It's okay. He's like, you know what? If you do have that picture of your ID, like, pull it up. And I'm like, okay.
So good.
I pull it up, they scan it in, and then I, because Valediction got postponed, I had rented with them before, but I had to cancel. So he went back to my old reservation and pulled up the back of my license, texted it to me. I showed them the picture of that. They scanned the backside, and then they sent me on my way. And he even was so sweet because he sat in the car and got me all hooked up to their little car play, and then he also gave me a pep talk. He was like, "And it's gonna be okay," because I may or may not have been this XYZ and else is going on, and I just don't know if I may have dumped a little bit on him because I was having a moment.
In that moment,
and so he
in that moment when people are that helpful, if you're really open to being helped, I can't help but overly thank people. When I get into that, I'm already crying, you've already seen me start crying, stranger.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why I'm crying.
That's exactly how it felt. It was there's no reason for this woman to be reacting this way to this thing. And so I did feel a little bit of no, there's some other, shit going on.
This is the A.D.H.Deep-Dive. I'm sorry that I haven't said it. It's not really worth it to say it. The show that's not about ADHD, but it's filled with proof it exists. The main point is I keep checking this and I keep bumping the flowers and they're not perfectly symmetrical. No, not really. Can you actually just put it a little bit closer? We're just gonna bump it right up next to the plant there, in real time. I'm gonna take it here. I'm just gonna move it right. Okay. We're just gonna there we go. See, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that's gone into this that has already stressed me out beyond belief, and Emma came in clutch with a bunch of stuff that I needed. The tripod, where we're going to use a microphone that she brought in. Not to talk about you like you're not in the room. But...
Oh, no, it's okay. All good.
So, Carlos. From the LA Kite, right?
Yes.
Fleet.
Yeah.
You're the MVP.
An actual star will live on in my heart forever and ever. And it was so nice because he was like, "And why are you here?" I'm like, "Doing some performance art with some friends." And when I returned the car, he was there and he remembered me.
Oh, what, really?
And he was like,
which means he's probably there now.
Yeah, and he was like, "How was the performance?" And I'm like, "It was really good, thank you."
Hell yes.
So just an A+ human being. I felt very cared for by a complete stranger, and that meant so much. Especially
setting up what was about to be the longest, not most stressful, but that drive was something.
It was intimidating.
Let's I quickly want to just rack focus real fast and read.
Sure.
I have to. Whatever. I'll talk about this in a second. All right, y'all. If you're watching the video version, see that skull? See this? This is not a punk house, it's a punk home banner. All of these things are available at catandcrew.com. That's right. They're the first sponsors. Catandcrew.com. Enter the promo code MONDAY. It's Monday, MUNDAY, to receive 10% off of your final purchase. You can get those koozies, you can get banners, you can get earrings, you can get coasters, you can get skull planters. I think it's really cool that they decided to give A.D.H.Deep-Dive listeners an exclusive deal. Because, it's cool that we're building a little audience here and that you guys get to have some sort of special perks that nobody else gets. So if you aren't familiar with it yet, go to catandcrew.com, enter the promo code MONDAY, MUNDAY at checkout, get 10% off your final order. Okay, back to the show. I want to just quickly talk about immersive theater again.
Okay.
I watched it clip out. I just want to quickly explain again what immersive theater is before we talk about our story. Because yes, the camera stopped rolling.
Oh, no.
And that was my bad. Okay. Emma and I do work. I'm going to talk to you. You and I do work for, can we talk about the company? Is that fine?
Yeah,
for the American Immersion Theater that does murder mystery parties. There's a subsidiary called the Murder Mystery Company.
Correct. Yes.
Murder mysteries are a part of immersive, or a type of immersive theater, in that you show up as just a willing participant. You are expected to play along and pretty much nothing else. Then the actors who are there know the story, know the mystery, know the loose script, but it's improv for the most part. And again, as a person who's a guest who's just participating in there for the experience, all you are expected to do is play along, because you are, like Emma was just saying before I found out that the clip wasn't rolling, part of the story, usually part of the driving force behind the narrative. At that point, go ahead, take it a little bit further.
No, absolutely. Yeah, immersive theater, it's exactly what you said. In order to have a good experience as a participant and as an audience member, it really does require that openness to show up and be present and be willing to play and step outside of your comfort zone a little bit. I mean, depending, right? There's a lot of folks who've done a lot of immersive theater as guests who that is their comfort zone, right? They want to show up and play. But for a lot of folks who it's new to, it's like, oh, am I supposed to just talk to you like we're conversing? That's
Right.
not traditional theater, and I think that's really special. But it is new to a lot of people.
Right. And there's a difference in the groupthink capacity as well, because like, which we'll talk about a little bit. Valediction, the show that we did, was a more intimate, subjective experience. Because there was a lot of one-on-ones, whereas oftentimes with murder mysteries or things like that, it's large groups,
Sure.
all playing together at the same time. There's very public scenes, but there's not as many like one-on-one. But again, murder mystery is just a type of immersive experience, and I'm saying that not just to the audience listening, but also to me at home, because I'm learning about immersive theater a lot, and have done in the last year.
Yeah.
And I think, harking back to what, real fast before we go into more immersive theater talk, one of the reasons that I felt bad about the last episode is not necessarily that I didn't. First of all, I thought it was your show the whole time.
Oh no.
From day one, I thought it was a show that you put together.
Oh no.
And I don't, just because whatever, you took on a very creative role in like making things happen. And so my projection of like this whole brand new world of a small intimate team doing a small intimate show was like, oh, I'm just going to defer to Emma because Emma knows what she's talking about. This is her show here. The person involved, can we say names?
Yes,
okay,
Michael,
the person who wrote the show, right?
I would say it was
Let's
Michael's.
Sure. You talk about what we
Absolutely.
did, and then we'll talk about. I'm trying to drive the narrative here, but I should just like allow the conversation to unfold.
So this project was Dissonance, which you were also a part of.
Yes.
It was you, me, and Michael Freese. It was his brainchild from the start, and then
Yes.
I got brought on to help write it.
Okay.
So very much co-creation, but very much his brainchild, story idea. I mean, would not have happened without him pushing it forward, starting it. So I want to give credit where credit's due there for sure.
And I did not know that going into that. I thought that I was just one of the actors of your show. So that was my first experience with you in immersive theater, aside from murder mystery, because we were both part of the same
cohort.
Initiation, something like that.
Training.
Training.
Way to put it.
We were initiated with swords
Yeah.
on our shoulders
We were.
into the American Immersion Theater together. It's part of the same group of newbies.
Yeah, we auditioned together.
Yeah, that's wild. So now, flash forward. This is a show you wrote and conceptualized yourself.
Yeah, that's correct.
And to do that, set up Firefly Tapestry a little bit.
So Firefly existed previously when I was living in Kansas in 2018, 2019. I was just kind of getting into immersive theater, getting my feet wet there. Went out to New York for a birthday trip and had my first experiences with some immersive theater out there and was just hooked, right? Yeah. So I go back to Kansas and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be a part of this. I just have this need to create and tell stories. But Dodge City, Kansas is not it's not an immersive hub by any means. And so I'm like, okay, there's some really cool opportunities to do remote work. So, work that
what year?
space.
What time is this?
I think the Firefly Instagram was created in November of 2019.
Okay. So
yeah.
this is pre-pandemic. Okay, go ahead.
It's pre-pandemic because so I wrote this remote experience for Firefly that was a modern day retelling of The Velveteen Rabbit, which is a story I love and hold very dear. And it was months and months of pre-show, which pre-show was just, characters interacting with potential guests, not all of whom went through, and that's fine by me, over Instagram, getting to know like this character and kind of some of her backstory. And then the actual experience was a 6-week long, I don't know what else, experience. 6-week-long experience where they exchanged emails with a different character. They would get a letter every week in the mail that gave clues to what was kind of going on. And then it ended with a series of 3 phone calls. I think it was like a half hour, 20 minutes, and an hour over the course of 2 days. That
and this was all
the story up.
And this was all conceptualized pre-pandemic, you're saying, but this is with... I'm commenting on the fact that you're already kind of planning a remote over the phone, Zoom, digital type experience before the world kind of shifted exclusively digital for that time.
Yeah. And it was so, I mean, the pandemic was awful. One thing that it,
and that's really, something I stand by.
Yes.
All you people saying the pandemic was a great thing.
Get out of here.
We're done. You're done.
We're done. No room for that here.
So
not at this table.
So the pandemic, which we agree was bad.
Okay, but the thing is, so spoilers. Okay, if you ever, I might remount it. So spoilers if you ever decide to do it. But the character they're corresponding with, one of them, he's in, I think 2008, and they're not supposed to know that. But then they started asking, like, "Oh my God, how are you dealing with the pandemic?" Because when I wrote the show, that wasn't an issue. And I'm like, "Oh my God!" So I had to like rewrite it to correspond with swine flu on his end, so that there was like something to like make it not like such a big reveal right away.
Right.
Because normally if there's no pandemic, it's like there's really small context clues.
Normally there's no pandemic.
Yeah. And so anyway, it really, I had to rewrite some pretty significant like chunks of the story to be like, oh, this, so that it wasn't such a big reveal right away. That there was this like time, synchronous thing going on.
Did it, in your mind, ruin...
The
dog has. I just want to continue to express every time there's a loud grumbling sound. It is the dog under the table. Although, my belly will grumble soon. And are we still getting Indian food after this?
100%.
Hell yeah, dude. I'm so excited for that. On a Saturday after the podcast, dude? Hell yeah. Okay, sorry. Continuing. Did the pandemic effect on the story in your mind, aside from what the pandemic did to all of us creatively in our brains, did it hurt the story for you? Like,
no, I don't think so, because I mean the core of the story was exploring this idea of what makes us real, and it is, and you'll see echoes of this in Valediction. It's to see and hold all the joyful and painful in equal measure, and to understand that that is what makes us human.
Sure.
And the story was about loss, and particularly, being able to see and hold both those things in people that we have lost, as well as like accepting that while we're still around.
And it was a subtle retelling of a story.
It was a subtle retelling of a story, and each character kind of corresponded to a character in the original. And so I don't think it hurt the telling of the story. I mean, I think maybe all of us were a little more, tender towards this idea of exploring our own humanity and our own inner worlds during that time.
Boy, were we.
So, I mean, it was, and that experience will always be really special to me for a lot of reasons. But one thing I care a lot about in immersive theater is this opportunity for people to feel seen. And because the pre-show was so long, and because the actual experience was 6 weeks, there was a really cool opportunity to do that for guests at the very end.
Right.
And some of these people, came back and did Valediction, and that was incredibly special as well. Yeah.
So that was your first experience in like spearheading an immersive experience. At a certain point, you began writing from top to bottom your own story.
Yes.
Talk about the writing process, at least.
For sure. So I didn't start writing Valediction until after Dissonance wrapped.
Okay.
So.
Oh, really? I thought this was like happening kind of in the background. Go ahead.
No, so I finished Velveteen, and also this is crazy. We were going through some life transition at the end of Velveteen Ribbons, and I remember doing my final calls for that show in a completely empty house. My husband had already left the house. I was sleeping on an air mattress with the dog, and so I'm just like at this empty kitchen table with just my mic and my laptop, doing these final scenes. It was really wild. And then like the next day, like after I finished shows, I like pieced off to Michigan with the dog.
The artist's way. The true artist's way.
But where was I? Oh yeah, so we got to Michigan, and it was pretty quickly that I jumped into Dissonance, because Dissonance had a couple of postponements as well. So I was wrapped up in that project for over a year, and then once that wrapped, I was like, I'm gonna take a break and let myself rest, which is never true.
No. If you're like me, when you take that break, you're just like, fuck, what am I doing? I'm sitting still. I can't do this.
I know. I have this very acute sense of, oh my God, life is short, and like I really just want to suck all I can out of it, and create and tell these stories, because I have so many that I want to tell. I keep this little notebook of just like ideas and jokes and stupid stuff like that.
God, I would love to read that notebook. What are these jokes? No, it's of course private thoughts.
Yeah, no, we can look at it. Some of them are really stupid.
I won't put you on the spot to tell me your jokes.
Okay.
We'll do that at the open mic later.
We'll do the open mic.
Come catch us at the Laugh Factory. What is that place downtown? What is a comedy spot?
Here?
A comedy spot in Grand Rapids. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I recently went. Whatever. Irrelevant. Continue.
So, and I did have in that little notebook just the phrase valediction, the art of saying goodbye. And I'm like, that one's like tugging at my soul right now. I do want to explore that one.
Well, I'm sorry. In this moment, is that the definition of valediction? The art of saying goodbye?
Not put quite so poetically, but it's, yeah. Like
do you have a textbook definition for valediction?
I would just Google it real quick.
Okay. Do you have your phone on you? Because if not, I can do it here.
It's fine. Max is on my phone.
Oh,
not on my phone.
Whatever. Who cares? Valediction?
Yeah.
Look it up later.
Yeah. It is something to that effect, put a little bit more Merriam-Webster than that.
But the show conceptualized.
Yeah. And so from there, I was like, okay, I really love the idea of all my stories existing in world. Even in Dissonance, there was a little nod to a character in Velveteen. I don't know if you remember that scene where Prudence is talking about the letters she used to write to Joey and they would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
There was
you were out in the garage.
I was out in the garage. Yeah, she was like, as if there was some cosmic letter carrier taking them away. That was like a huge character in my first show.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
believe it or not, or maybe you do believe it. I don't think I'm familiar with the Velveteen Rabbit. Aside from you telling me that it like, it was a book, a children's book then.
Children's book. Letter Carrier is one that was in my retelling of it. But the premise of the story, it's really sad. It makes me cry.
Oh boy, I'm here for it.
So there's this little boy who gets a Velveteen Rabbit for Christmas, and the Velveteen Rabbit is his favorite toy. Like, the little boy sleeps with him. Not like that.
A little boy sleeps with a rabbit. Yeah. It's an adorable, wholesome story with no problems.
Of course. Very... So he snuggles the rabbit.
I don't think... Go ahead. Okay. And, boy snuggles with a rabbit. Continue.
Yeah, but then and the rabbit, he has this encounter with this other toy called the Skin Horse. And the Skin Horse is just raggedy. And, but this horse is real. Of all the toys, like, this horse is real. And the rabbit's like, does it hurt when you become real? Like, because you look like you're in shambles. And the horse is like, no. By the time you've had all your fur loved out, and like your eyeballs get a little raggedy, and your mane is a little bit worse for the wear. It's like the love that has made you real, and it's the love that has like caused all these ragged edges, and love kind of accepts all those things. So time goes on, the Velveteen Rabbit starts to get a little shabby at the edges and a little worn and a little loved, and
prepping my heart for breaking.
Yeah.
Continue.
And this boy gets sick with like scarlet fever or something, and spoiler alert for the book. Whoa. The nanny like takes the rabbit out to the backyard to burn him, along with all the toys. Because like the boy had scarlet fever, right? Or whatever illness he had. And so as the rabbit is dying, about to be burned to death.
This is a book made during World War II for sure. Go ahead.
It dates back.
Yeah.
He like cries this tear, and like it lands, and this like fairy like appears. And she like takes the rabbit to go be real. He was already real, her having been loved so much by this boy who like saw his, here it comes, who like saw his shabby edges and like his, worn velveteen patches, and loved him not in spite of it, but because of it. And so she, in his dying, takes him and like makes him into an actual real rabbit. And kind of the closing scene of the book is him like peering out to like, watch this little boy live his life. And so that's the story.
Can I just say I'm also very glad that the boy in this story does not die of scarlet fever.
He does not die. The rabbit gets burned alive though, which is a little dark.
Yeah, well, I was also, when you were explaining that, I was thinking about how difficult of a concept that must have been to absorb as a child. But Toy Story 3 comes to mind.
It does.
Where like they're...
Oh my God.
Which you think about like difficult concepts for children to absorb, but like that, Bambi's mom, like anything Disney forward like, it actually used to deal with very difficult concepts, and I guess maybe to a large extent still does. I don't consume as much Disney content as I once did. Difficult concepts to wrap your head around. Continue how this... I keep saying the word continue as if I need to give you permission to talk.
No, so wrapping all the way back around, I think we were talking about the writing of Valediction.
Yes.
I love the idea of all stories existing in world with one another. So...
You've got a multiverse.
I do have a multiverse.
Sweet.
I kind of had a loose idea of the way I wanted to explore what it means to say goodbye. It was kind of that 3-tiered. To say goodbye is to understand that there are certain joys you won't get to experience anymore with this thing you're saying goodbye to, whether it's an opportunity or a person or, whatever else you might be grieving. It's also to understand that there are certain sorrows that thing was associated with that you won't have to experience, but in saying goodbye to that sorrow, it's its own unique kind of pain. And it's also saying goodbye to the crossroads, right? There's now not these potential futures that you can have with this thing that you say goodbye to because you made a choice to go down one path or another in the saying goodbye. And I'm like, okay, those are kind of the 3 tiers. How do I want to tell this as a story? So I started with those bones, and I knew very quickly that I wanted wherever the show was to be in a dark sky zone. So that then began the venue search. And there was only a few locations I could have picked. One was in Idaho, which I'm like, oh God, we can't get anybody. No one's going to come out to Idaho. Yeah.
Instead of driving up the gravel field, you have to drive through the cornfields.
Literally, yeah. I'm like, okay, that one's not going to work.
That would put me in a Children of the Corn zone, too, and I don't know if I was ready for that.
Next time.
Oh, man.
I looked at some places in Upper Peninsula, Michigan. I was like, what if we can do Northern Lights? But that was a little too finicky. I'm like, I'd rather just do stars. And then I found this venue, the castle, and I'm like, okay, oh my God, like I'm gonna reach out to the owners and see if I can book.
I cannot wait to talk about them. By the way,
they are so delightful. They are angels on earth.
But so excited to talk about them.
Earth. I was like, hey, hi. I was so nervous. I'm like, they're gonna say no. I'm like, so I really love your place, and maybe I'm planning on doing this immersive theater production. Like, we'd be putting this many guests through at a time. This is kind of what to expect.
Who did you speak with?
I think it was Jennifer.
Okay, all right.
It was Jennifer. It was a couple, Nigel and Jennifer. And
I think let's plug it. Let's talk about it. Who else would see this place in the middle? If you're in the absolute middle of nowhere, there is a little bed and breakfast.
The Shady Lady.
Called the Shady Lady.
Yes.
In just outside of Beatty, Nevada.
I think the address would be Bonnie Claire for them.
Bonnie Claire. The names Bonnie and Claire or Bon E. Claire?
Bonnie, like Bonnie.
Bonnie Claire.
Yeah.
Bonnie Claire. That's very French.
Cannot unhear it.
My vision of Jennifer is that she's maybe in her late 50s, early 60s.
Oh, I'm a terrible judge. I don't know.
Either way, maybe it's not even appropriate to talk about. I don't know. And then her husband Nigel, which just projection or what I envisioned Jennifer, now picturing her, this is where she grew up. That it felt like she was like her hometown. Nigel, little old South African man.
He's so wonderful. My heart.
God, I love him so much.
Obsessed. Yeah.
Just to give the concept or the context of who Nigel is, it's so that this conversation can continue. I didn't know if you were on the phone with Nigel.
No, for sure. Well, I wasn't even on the phone. I sent them a message on Airbnb asking to book off of Airbnb, or I asked for their email or something.
Off of Airbnb, so it wasn't done. Interesting.
No, well, because Airbnb has a bunch of fees and stuff, and I was like, I have no budget. And it has to be self-funded.
That is a good ask.
So I was like, hey, would you be willing to book direct, and 2, would you be willing to book it all, knowing that this is, kind of what we're doing? And it's, I knew we weren't going to be making a mess. I knew our team is very respectful.
And the team was 4 people, to be clear.
4 people, yes. To shout them all out, David Mund, Quinn Leary, Austin Menard, and myself.
Yes.
All of whom are amazing, and I could talk about you all forever and ever.
And we will talk about them.
Yeah. Everyone deserves a shout out, I think.
Yeah.
So I kind of explained what we were doing, and they were like, yeah, that's great. What dates? And I was floored. I was like, oh my God.
Sweet.
Well, because I think there's also an element of like, I am so excited about this that I feel like could a thing this could happen, you know?
Let's talk about the surrounding context of the place too, because it wasn't just, yes, of course you were booking for a clear sky zone, but the reason that this place worked out so well, this was built in the 90s. Like it was not that old.
I think.
In the literal middle of nowhere. 40-ish, 60-ish, something like 40
acres?
Well, no, away from Area 51.
Yes.
That was enough to get me to go. I was pretty hyped about that. And yes, aliens were seen and experienced, and maybe we'll talk about that.
Not even an exaggeration. Yeah.
Also, just a quick projection. This is going to be a longer podcast. I have to. There's just so much to talk about.
Listen, I love it. I'm
if you're fine with it, okay.
Yeah, no. I could talk forever.
So, it's kind of in a maybe I'll put pictures up. I'm not 100% sure, but just to kind of paint the scene, it's kind of an observatory. I would say it's more like a big tower of a castle.
It was like
it is a castle.
I think Nigel said it was like a turret by definition.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much.
Kind of
it was like a silo.
Circular. Yeah, silo's good.
Yeah. But
4 stories.
From stone. Like no wood in that place. I think Nigel straight up said, like, you can't burn this place down. I don't think you should try if you book this place. Don't go for it. But it is metal and stone. And has a spiral staircase that goes straight up to a glass dome, which is just a clear sky viewing experience. In every direction, maybe about an hour and a half, there's nothing. Just nothing.
The silence, I think, was maybe more striking than the sky. I don't know that I've ever experienced silence like that.
Yeah, especially because of what we came to find out, even though we're pretty sure we heard some critter type animals. Although we did see donkeys, wild burrow along the way.
We did.
We can't confirm that we saw any animals, but it sounded like there were things. The main reason I say that is there weren't even like the sound of like birds or adjacent animals like howling or doing whatever off in the distance.
Nothing.
Because it was kind of uninhabitable, like, unless you have access to food and water shipped in. Like, the coyotes weren't even touching that place.
Yeah.
The aloneness, the sense of, being alone was overwhelming out there at times, which meant it was perfect.
Yeah. And that stillness was really good. It wasn't something that I took into consideration, but I think even just for our team being able to, in the middle of all that felt really hectic, step out onto the porch and just have it was just... It made it a lot easier to be internally meditative when everything externally was facilitating that.
Sure.
But yeah, so the venue, was really exciting.
An amazing booking.
Locked that in, and then from there I started on the story, and that was just kind of a chipping away process.
Post booking the place.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about team assembly.
Yeah. Team assembly. I wanted people I liked and trusted and respected and thought were talented more than anything else. And so I kind of had a idea of the characters that were going to be present.
Continue. I'm just shifting something.
Continue.
Okay.
You're good.
But before the script was even fully finished, I was like, okay, I know I want Austin. Like, I adore Austin. I want him on my team. So I reached out to him. And then I also reached out to Quinn, and it was because I wanted to make sure that, they were in before I even started like fleshing out these characters, because I wanted it to fit who they were.
But did you know you wanted Austin to be a part of it, or did you know that you wanted Austin to be the archivist?
I knew I wanted him to be the archetype of Death, whatever that ended up looking like.
Okay.
Death is a kind and vibrant representation of death, not as something scary.
Very tall.
Very
tall.
Yes,
okay.
Pretty short.
Go ahead.
And then Quinn, who, you know this now, is just a magical human.
Oh my God.
I originally, the thought for that role was as more of a curator and a guide than as a somebody who like the narrative was about, because that's just, Quinn is, again, very much somebody who sees people really, really well.
Solid roommate. It was my bunkmate for the week.
Yeah. Very much somebody who would be able to guide people through this space of exploring goodbye, and then, you know, things kind of shifted and ended up, you know, having his character be more central to the narrative. And then I wanted you on the team. I remember I called you twice. And I was like,
initially.
Yeah.
Well, because before the actual show, you were doing some backstory interactions with the participants of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you first reached out, right? Or was that... Or did you reach out long before that? Like, do you want to do the... Because initially, I think some context we didn't explore, this was going to be done in the hot heat of the desert in August.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. I don't think I fully wrapped my mind around how hot that was going to be. Because also my context was, I knew it was in the desert, right? And I had this experience in the desert doing a pseudo immersive thing, where at night it was, I mean, it's a cold,
yeah.
And, you know, during the day it's a heat, but it's very dry. And so I just, again, did not fully wrap my head around how problematic this was going to be. And it was very quickly that potential participants and, you know, members of the team were reaching out to me being concerned. And I'm like, okay, you know, this is probably not safe. We do need to reschedule. And so I was crossing my fingers and praying to whatever deity would hear me, that Nigel and Jennifer would be okay with me moving dates, without forfeiting that deposit.
Without forfeiting the deposit, right.
Because that would have been prohibitive to rebooking, and I would have had to seriously consider if I would have been able to do the show at that time.
This is a quick interjection. It has nothing to say about Nigel, Jennifer, or the castle, because all three of those things were as fantastic as they could have been. How competitive was the booking? It seems...
It wasn't.
I mean, I don't know how I want to talk about it in order. It's tough to get to.
It's an odyssey.
It is a journey into the middle of nowhere. I know we keep using that expression, and I'm sorry to continue looking only to you. And it's like, just to remind you, it was in the middle of nowhere.
Actually, yeah.
From where I was picked up in LA, Reseda, it was a 6-hour drive. 3 hours of those are through the mountains with SOS only service. So if you didn't set your GPS before you left and you somehow disconnected your GPS, you might not have a GPS and then be lost.
Granted, there's like one road, right?
One single road. That's right. With like 2 gas stations.
Yeah. So
that's a big thing.
Yeah, that is a huge concern. It's like, hey, and I remember putting that in the pre-show instructions, like, this is your last chance to fuel up. Please take advantage of that.
Can we...
Uh-oh.
Let's talk about the rental. What happened?
Okay.
So, we're so out of order here.
It's okay.
But, if I may,
you may.
Because I think
permission granted.
I think it was I don't know that it was my fault, but I was driving.
It was the aliens' fault.
It was the aliens' fault. Okay, yes, I'm so glad that you said aliens, because it's time. Okay, all right. So, a quick prologue.
Yes.
The journey there, and even though as stressful as it was, fantastic.
Oh, so good.
The most scenic, beautiful, wonderful, and we had a great crew of people who made each other laugh the whole entire time. Yeah. It was that sort of like transformative, I'm glad we had this to get to know each other before because I didn't know them.
Which it's wild to me because I love all three of you so dearly, and I, feel like I've known all of you all forever, but it was... From that car trip would not have felt like you three were meeting for the first time.
Yeah, we were.
I think everybody just gelled.
Quinn and Austin didn't know each other either?
No.
Oh, I thought they were did immersive stuff. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are listening. Fantastic passengers in the vehicle. Just great conversation the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, great conversation. Like the conversations we had made that 6-hour trip still feel long. we only had one single break. We had a break and a half, which was a gas station stop, and then a Subway, which out in the middle of nowhere.
We were. I got roasted.
Oh my god. I forgot about that guy. There was only one little like rest stop gas station food place. Like there was a little dinky hole in the wall gas station, and then from what I saw on some of the reviewers, there was like a bar close by. But the like, I don't know what to compare it to. What is that type of like a
the place that only sold the t-shirts? Is that what you're talking about? Where we saw the birds?
Where we got the Subway.
Oh, where we got the Subway.
Yeah, what is that type of thing? It's like
like a truck stop.
Like a truck stop, but there's a type of word for that. Like not a tourist spot, but whatever. If you're passing through, this is the place you go.
It was selling like souvenirs and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only food anywhere nearby was one Subway, and Emma was so down to just be like, I'm gonna take your recommendations, guy behind the counter. And every single time you ordered something, he'd be like, well, that's not right.
I was like, all right, man, that's cool.
Because you got the ball rolling with saying, like, what do you recommend? He said,
well, I ordered a very specific sandwich for you Subway aficionados. I think it was the Mexicali.
The Mexicali?
Yeah.
Which is it's just a sandwich.
It's a spicy sandwich.
It's a spicy sandwich.
Spice.
And then you asked for...
Well, no, he was like asking what kind of cheese I wanted, and I'm like, I don't know. Provolone, American. And he's like, that's not a Mexicali.
Well, then that's not a Mexicali.
All right, man. Like,
so why'd you ask?
put on what you know. And I wasn't actually offended. It was fun. It was very funny.
Oh, we were all laughing at it.
But yeah, and so I just kind of took his recommendations from there. But
that's so funny. He was just like, oh,
yeah.
What are you doing? What are these three people doing in the middle of nowhere? So, okay, we take the rest of the journey out to the castle, which is only accessible by GPS coordinates at a certain point.
Yeah.
Hi, buddy. Hello. Oh, are you on camera? Oh! He just went like a snake back into his hole. So, once you turn off the last main road, you have about 30 minutes left of driving down exclusively dirt and gravel road with large parts of that surrounding area, which is something we were conversationally reflecting on, probably untouched by humans.
Crazy. Yeah.
For untold amounts of time. Like, I'm sure randomly, like, yeah, there are many spots, especially if it's owned private property that, like, people have been on and people have touched. But when you look just across the mountains, so much of that has just been, like, left alone for hundreds of years.
It's so remote. And, there's no reason. It's not like there's hiking trails.
Right.
It's just...
Unless you're a couple of weird-ass artists trying to do some performance art in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So we get there. There's still about 2 hours of daylight left.
No, I think the sun had set by the time we arrived, because I remember...
We did have one... Well, go ahead.
Oh, gosh. I feel like I remember it being very dusky when we were following Nigel down that road.
It was dark.
Yeah.
Or it was getting dark.
It was getting dark.
It was like Quinn and I had made the decision. There's a grocery store an hour and a half away. No.
Oh God, was it? I thought it was like 40 minutes. It was like 40 miles.
That was 40 miles.
Yeah.
Which meant
a half hour down that road, and then.
But that was 40 miles of road time. That wasn't considering getting out.
Sure.
So, regardless, it took us about an hour-ish to get to this grocery store. An hour and a half-ish to get to this grocery store.
Yeah, and Austin and I had stayed behind to help set up the menu.
Sorry. So you guys were setting up, which I don't think we'll talk about what that was like on your behind-the-scenes side of this, because I don't think I know anything about that because of how crazy this side of the story was.
Valid, yeah.
So Quinn and I go to a place I think called like Rayleigh's. Raileys, something like that.
Yeah.
Bridget, the one old lady. I love it. Whatever. Bridget thought we were a couple when we came in, and from that moment on, treated us like a couple. Was very appreciative of us bringing this random culture to town. She said, like, I just want to appreciate you guys for bringing some culture to our little town. And we're like, thanks, you're welcome. But we went to stock up on some groceries, got some things for foods and whatever extra kind of stuff that we needed. And then we were to make the trip back. I see 80 miles, something like that, 60 miles on the thing.
How much gas is left. Yeah.
Yep. And I do some like loose, weak math in my head where I'm like, we're good.
I'm sure you were also exhausted.
I was so tired.
Yeah,
jet lagged.
We were all so tired.
I was still on Michigan time.
Yeah, that's right, because we had the 3-hour difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
So by the time we actually got to bed at 3 a.m, it was like 6 a.m. or whatever, right? Yeah, something like that. Wow, what a week. Anyways, so we then take the trip back, and man, just first say that along the way, I definitely made a wrong turn and doubled down.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I missed a turn and doubled down, so I just kept going straight.
Okay.
Which was good. It was on that road offset the gravel stuff.
Okay.
He was like, I think that was our turn. I was like, no, definitely not. Definitely not. Let's just keep going. And then I eventually had to be like, you were right. I'm so sorry. But also, when I do that, I now have eaten up the excess gas that I was thinking about.
Oh, that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah, so...
Okay.
At this point now, the closest gas station is much further away than we have time for, time-wise.
Yeah.
I should have listened to Quinn on multiple occasions. But then we finally get back up on the gravel road, and now it's complete darkness.
It is. It's so late.
And the Joshua trees around us look like human beings.
Because they're short little Joshua trees.
Yep.
They're stubby.
Yep.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the notification on the screen, or on the little display, whatever the HUD, whatever the fuck I'm trying to talk about, the speedometer, the electronic vehicle thing, it tells me, you just popped a tire.
And what happened at the same time?
Literally, thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
Because right before this, Quinn and I see off to our right side, so Quinn is illuminated by a glowing, huge red light.
And again, nothing around.
Literally nothing around us.
Yeah.
And we tried to do the reflective math of what if I hit the brake? And the brake was the light that was casting its light on you. But let me tell you, we were so scared of being in the middle of nowhere, I was not hitting the brake, first of all. And if I did, it wouldn't have glown like it did. It was like, what the hell was that thing out in the middle of nowhere? Less than half a mile. Boom. The thing says tire pressure, 12 on one. 36 on the other.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no. And then it goes from 12 to 11 to 10.
And you're maybe a mile or two?
Well, at this point, we're at the gate.
So you're close.
We're close to the gate, but we can't see.
Right.
We don't, because the castle is still we saw the castle from a distance, but we didn't know how many twists and turns we still had left to do. It was like a mirage kind of. And so at a certain point we went, oh no, no, here's what we did. We got out to check to see if the spare was in there, right? Or am I mixing things up? Did we not do that until you got back?
I checked for that in the morning and I was disappointed when it wasn't there.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you exited the vehicle after the alien?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
David.
I can't remember, but
David, no.
I can't remember why, because we definitely got it. Oh, I just needed to check, is this thing flat or is this popped?
Sure.
It was definitely steaming out, and Quinn and I both went okay, neither of us know what to do about vehicles. We know that the castle is close. We know where we're at in relation to this. Let's just go. Mm-hmm. And we get all the way up there. And now we've gotten to a point where we have absorbed the fact that we might have bent the rim on a rental, and we definitely don't have enough gas to get to the nearest gas station. And the remoteness... Oh! The power.
Wait, no, finish the car story. Finish the car story.
I'm just trying to remember, were we also...
Power happened the next day.
Power happened the next day. Okay, well, regardless,
yeah.
We absorb the fact that all of this stuff happens. We don't have enough gas to get to the back. But, flash forward, God bless his heart, Nigel...
What an angel on earth.
Because at this point, you took over. Because you were show mom. And you're you took over the responsibilities. Once we got back, we were Mom, the car's broken, and I don't have enough gas. I didn't put gas in it.
It was the next day, because I was okay, you know what? It was, again, very early in the AMs at this point. I was no unsolvable problems. We'll look at it in the morning. I figured maybe we just needed a compressor to, refill it, right? Just to get us back to, civilization, whatever. I walk out in the morning, and it is pancake.
It's flat.
And so then I, look in the trunk and I'm okay, there's probably a donut. Open it up and nothing. The rental company had taken the spare out, they'd taken the jack out, everything.
Listen, this lady showed us a picture of her license. She doesn't deserve the spare.
Actually, when I wasn't looking, they're
let's just take this.
Yeah.
Collateral.
So then I'm like, oh no, and so
to be clear, I'm sorry again.
Yeah.
I think all of us at this point were thinking, if we pop our tire, are the guests gonna pop their tire?
That was definitely another. Well, it was okay. However, the red light thing.
Yeah, we were. The only reason I'm glossing over this in a large extent is because it's one of those conjecture-y things that, like, there's no way I'll be believed. Even though I know that you believe me.
I do.
What was that light? Like, the remoteness of it all.
The fact that it was at the exact same time is what gets me. It's weird. It's weird, right?
Right. If I allow myself to, like, play with what it could have been, maybe when you pop a tire, an external sensor goes off and lights your car up and the surrounding 2 miles with glowing red light. But I don't think so.
I don't think that's it. No.
And I'm yelling. And I'm sorry about that. But what was that light?
I wish we could have seen it. Well, it was because I remember at that point, we saw you guys at the gate. Austin and I were up in the observatory, and we're like, "Oh, the guys are back!"
Oh, you reminded me.
So we were like, I hope it's unlocked, whatever. We were like trying to like flash lights at you, and then I remember then we couldn't see you anymore. We like went down and back up. Oh, go ahead.
In that moment, I now realize we had to open the gate and then go back to lock it up. But we were scared. I was scared. I didn't know what was going to get me. Maybe a mountain lion. I don't know. And so we open up the gate and then drive, like, I don't know, what's some attainable thing on foot? A quarter of a mile up front.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I didn't shut the gate. So instead of just putting it in reverse, I got out of the car and just hoofed it. And then by the time that I'm like almost there, I realized, like, I'm so far away from the car. Like, I'm just picturing, like, did you ever see what's the movie where you gotta stay quiet? Is it A Quiet Place? A Quiet Place.
I think so. Yeah.
Whatever, where the monster just like scoops up the kid from like across the bridge, and then you don't see the monster, you don't see the kid, you just see the remaining trail of where the kid was.
Oh
I pictured that with a mountain lion, just like taking me down, and then I'm gone. So then I'm hoofing it back to the car. And Gwen got scared, so he shuts the door. The door is shut, and so by the time I get back to him, he's like holding the handle like this. He was like ready to lock the door if like something.
Oh, sorry.
Ready to lock the door if something like was chasing me, because all he saw was me like kind of running and then sprinting, and then the lights going like this, and he's like, "I thought something was chasing you. I thought you were scared."
Yeah. And then you guys, we didn't know where you went, right? Because we saw you at the gate, and then we were like, oh, we're gonna go like find them, whatever. We like couldn't see you. I don't know if the lights were off, so we like had walked back up to the observatory, and then like you were nowhere to be found. And then one of you guys was like let us in.
Oh yeah.
Like at the door knocker. Oh, yeah. She like scared me out of my skin.
Oh, that's right. Because you guys weren't used to hearing the knock at the door yet, but there was one of those authentic like lion head like
metal on metal
thing. Mm-hmm. And because of how scared we were, I don't know if we did it as a bit or if we did it because like we were scared, but we're putting them on the same scared level as we are.
You did.
I just fucking slammed that thing.
Yeah, because we were mid like, where are they?
Boom,
and then boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Amazing.
It was wild.
Yeah. A good part of me wanting to do this podcast was talking about all of the nonsense around the show.
Oh my God. We went through so much, and we made it happen.
So much.
But yes, so Nigel, this amazing soul, because I did roadside assistance, and you know what, my insurance company was like, we're gonna tow you to Vegas.
3.5 hours away.
We can't do that because it's not like they're gonna tow it back when they're done. It would mean one of us has to go and be present with this rental car that we have to return. So we're like, surely there's somebody who like knows a guy who like repairs cars out of his garage or something. A guy. Yeah, and so we call Nigel up, and he's like, yeah, and you know, him and his brother-in-law Paul is amazing.
Oh my God.
Shout out to Nigel and Paul. Which
is funny because it was his brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Nigel, South African.
I think, yeah.
Paul, South African.
Maybe?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
That Australian, that accent was.
Okay.
Yeah. Jennifer, not. So my assumption is, she went to South Africa.
I
don't know. I'm making assumptions about these people because
I would love to know their story.
Him and Paul aren't blood related, but they're both South African. And she's very American, it feels. Whatever, I'm making assumptions about people.
I don't know. But
regardless.
They're fascinating people.
And
love them.
Paul, go ahead.
Yes.
Continue, sorry.
So these angels on Earth, they brought a jack, they took our tire off, brought it into town to get repaired. It was way too, it was gone beyond repair, and so they got a new one, brought it back, put the tire back on, and they just invoiced me for it with...
Gave gas.
And had a gallon of gas.
Because whoops. I shouldn't have driven with that for you gas.
Yeah. And then, so we were just, set, and it was fantastic. And so and that was such a huge stress, but that same day was the power.
I wanna touch on that, but also I wanna gloss over it as well. Sure. In that, it was such a pain for a very short amount of time. It felt long because it was happening in its we were waiting for it to go out again.
Right before we did our first run.
Yep.
I guess the long story short is that the entire castle runs on solar. Mm-hmm. And so, it takes the sun in and it charges these batteries, which when the sun is not out, runs the house. And I remember being specifically told, hey, make sure you don't run out of power, make sure you're turning lights off. It sounded like, just, hey, don't leave everything on overnight. And so we were very careful. We would go through and do checks to make sure everything was turned off.
Even though, as a spoiler, what we came to learn is we definitely could have left all the lights on all day, all night.
If it was working properly.
Right.
And
we just came to find out it wasn't.
It wasn't. Right. And so, kind of right before we were about to start our first run of the show, the power starts flickering on and off. And we're like, what is happening? And it was a slightly overcast day that day. It did end up clearing up for the show, which is great for the stars. But the battery had kind of dipped below this critical 10% power level. And there was a generator, which was great. So we, called Nigel up and he came and kicked on the generator. But the problem was the generator wasn't charging the batteries. And so, we're an hour out from showtime.
Yeah.
The venue owner's on the phone with his solar guy, his generator guy.
I want to also take this time to talk about our band, Midwest Skies. Grand Rapids, pop punk, alt rock. First of all, please head to the website midwestskiesrock.com to check, to follow up on any information about upcoming shows and interesting events we may have planned for the future. But also, we sell some merch there. We've got beanies, we've got hats, we've got stickers, we've got can things. I don't know what they're officially called. I think they just keep your cans cool. Can cooler? Can holder. Just go to MidwestSkiesRock.com. Get you some. That's it. Back to the show.
All of that to say, the reason it was so stressful is because show preparation is happening at the same time. So it's in our brain, if this doesn't go right, there might be problems. To be clear, well, go ahead.
And a big part of it also was can we have people maneuver the space safely?
Right.
Do we have enough auxiliary light? And, I had packed 50 million little candles and other types of light. And so, while we are, also trying to get into costume, also trying to do, things you would expect to be doing, the little bit of time before a show, we're also how do we light this space so it's safe? Do we have to delay? If this goes into tomorrow, do we now have to tell people not to come out because we can't safely maneuver them through the space? All of it is going on in the background. And also, is there going to be, which would be fine because it's their space, are there going to be active repairs happening in the solar and in the generator while we're trying to have scenes with people? And luckily it all did get resolved before the first show time.
Because Nigel is a freaking godsend.
Amazing.
Nigel and Paul come up with some diesel, fill up the generator, and they're just run on the generator tonight and we'll figure it out in the morning.
Yeah, cool, because they did finally get it to, they bypassed the solar to make the generator just power the house.
Right, because initially the generator was supposed to back up the solar and to charge the solar. And then the solar was supposed to run the house, or it was supposed to fill up the solar batteries just in case. But eventually it was just we gotta just run on the generators.
Yeah.
So we run through the generator, which is a little loud, but if anything, it it caused us no logistical problems.
Yes, in the end, which was fantastic.
Which meant we could do the show prep as normal. We could get the show going, ready to go. It wasn't a problem at all. The lights weren't an issue or anything. And the heat itself was run off of gas separately.
Yes,
so
thank goodness.
Even in the worst case scenario where the power goes out, which, great, it didn't. We would have had heat. Yes. We wouldn't have been stranded with no heat.
Thankfully. Yeah.
Thinking about that on the flip side of what that would have been like in the heat of August, I wonder...
Oh my gosh.
Because if the power goes out, that means it's probably not good for the AC. But there wouldn't have been this, I don't even know, whatever. Yeah. Didn't happen.
That's right.
Didn't happen. Don't even need to think about it.
Yeah.
And then from that point, even though maybe there's stuff I'm not covering that we wanted to cover, the show is on.
The show's on.
And that means 3 nights. Did we start Thursday?
We did all our prep Thursday.
Prep Thursday?
Yeah.
Well, Thursday's when we got there, right?
Yeah, so while you guys were gone, like, Austin and I were setting up the, like, space.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, right. I just meant on a timeline. So the first shows were each day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 5:30, 7:30, 9:30, 11:30. There were 4 rooms, which meant guests arrive and then are escorted into their room where they are to remain until their showtime.
If they did early arrival. Right. So we kind of offered that as an option for the reasons that, are apparent when we tell the alien story, right? Because it's a little, I did my best to give as detailed instructions for arrival as possible, but even then, navigating that in the dark is a little intimidating.
Yeah.
And so giving people the option to arrive in the daylight, if they wanted to, that's awesome. But then you just can't really be wandering around this space while we're running other shows or prepping or...
Also, when people would show up, it was pitch black, so their lights could affect, just them showing up could affect somebody's show while they are taken outside.
Right.
Which was kind of where I was put into play at the start. My first kind of initial role, aside from whatever tech and media we did after the fact, was just greeting people as they came up to the area and then sending them to a place where they could park and then leading them into their room if that was what they were to do. And most people stayed overnight.
Yeah, I think of the 4 time slots, 3 you could also opt to stay overnight, which I think everybody did.
Oh, so if someone showed up at
our 5:30s,
they never stayed? Really?
Yeah. I mean, it only happened twice, which is probably why.
Right, I wasn't thinking about it. But regardless, so the show is about an hour and a half, and I wanna be careful in a way. I kind of want you to lead the charge on how much of the show we talk about, because I don't know.
I think if we give a pretty broad, like, hey, this might be spoilery, listen at your own discretion, that's okay.
I do want to do that, but also for your sake.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I want to talk about upfront. And whatever. This is the podcast, and I don't feel like I should be defending myself, but yes, we're bouncing around. I'll double down. A.D.H.Deep-Dive, the show that's not about ADHD,
Listen,
but it's filled with proof it exists.
We both got it.
We're just bouncing around. Do you see a world where you do this again?
Oh, 100%.
This story.
I would love to. I think probably not until 2025.
Oh, yeah. I mean, planning it again this year would be a whole thing.
Yeah. And there's some other things I'm really, really excited for this year. And there's other stories I do want to tell. I think I do run into that is, I love the idea of remounting stories that have already been told, in part because, financially you already have all the supplies for it. Effort-wise, you already know the story. You have a team that works. But I just get itchy to I'm like, oh, I really want to, but I want to do this too. And I really can't run multiple projects in tandem, I'm finding, or I lose my mind. And so,
Tell me. I think this is maybe a space to share something that's happening in my little multiverse.
Please, yeah.
I see a shift coming creatively, and I think I'm going to talk about this in the next podcast, because this is podcast number 49. The next podcast will be number 50, which I think is just going to be a moment. It's going to be a big moment of reflection.
Yeah.
In that, the reason this podcast started is because I was making videos about the stuff I'm already talking about. And I started getting exhausted by all of the videos I made, like all the video I shot, was only being shot to help me process some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that felt unsustainable long term. So the podcast was initially a way for me to talk to creative people and also like shake that imposter syndrome of like, oh, everybody else is suffering too. Like, because it's important information to get as a creative. Is that like, this is very difficult. It's hard to convince yourself you're good at something.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, once you do the good thing, do it again.
It is.
And once you've done a good thing, there's a lot of pressure to follow that up with a better thing.
Yeah.
And that felt unsustainable on my YouTube channel. So it was like, rather than tell this story here, this story here, this story here, let's talk long form and just get it all out.
Yeah.
Post episode 50, I think I've gotten some of the things out that I needed to get out. Or the things off my chest that I needed to get off my chest. Now I want to start telling stories.
Ooh.
So I think the shift is going to be, this podcast will be more relevant to just talking to creatives about the creative process. And then the YouTube channel will find a renewed focus on like telling not my stories.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing all that up is I see Valediction as being a multimedia type of story in that it doesn't have to be more than just the immersive experience.
Sure.
But it is a palatable enough story that you could make a film out of, and I don't want you to spoil that film. You know what I mean?
Do you really think that?
Oh, absolutely. I would make a Valediction short film in a heartbeartbeat.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
This is something I want to pitch into the little immersive group that we have, but I also want to be careful in the way that we talk about it because
that's fair enough. Sure.
I want to talk about the immersive experience that was Valediction and not so much the story of Valediction.
Well, and I also think the story, I mean, there's a reason I feel the need to do so much pre-show is that it's kind of lore heavy. I think if we were to talk story, we'd be here for like another 3 hours.
And that is a trap I think I fell into with Dissonance as well. As I was like, let's talk about the story. And if you're not part of the story, it feels like you're just a fly on the wall in a creative meeting rather than a creative discussion. But to kind of maybe home in, I never know the correct use of home.
Think with an N.
There's two versions, home and hone. I don't know what one is, because like, there's a homing missile. Like, we're homing in on this, but there's also, you're honing a skill. Like, you're sharpening a skill. So I think we're homing in on. That's what I mean. I use them interchangeably.
I think you can hone in, but we're homing.
We're homing.
With an ing.
Right.
Yeah.
We're homing in on this.
Okay.
Regardless, the immersive experience that was Valediction, to avoid some of the plot, was not just lore heavy, but also heavy. Like, it was a lot of heavy themes.
Sure.
And I apologize if I'm stepping on your toes in telling the story.
Not at all.
But to kind of give you guidelines around what you should maybe talk about without spoiling, is that art of saying goodbye. Like, what were you trying to communicate without saying what you said?
I think I don't know where I want to go with this.
I will say you brought up something just a minute ago that was almost reflective, maybe word for word, of some of the script.
Yeah, the 3-tiered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, so Valediction was the art of saying goodbye, which meant processing those 3 things. Can you touch on those things again?
Absolutely.
Yes. So
I'll preface it by saying I think a lot of times, I mean, emotion in life is just so multifaceted, right? An experience of joy is also sometimes having that lingering sorrow in the background of when's the other shoe gonna drop, or will this be the last time I experience this joy? And like sorrow also, you know, as much as it hurts, you know, sometimes I don't want to be like, oh, there's a silver lining to anything, but like there can be beauty found in the connection of like holding another person's sorrow or feeling held in that sorrow. Everything is so, I don't want to say gray, but it's multicolored, and it's this, you know, just whole constellation of human experience. And I wanted to take goodbye from being this goodbye sad, goodbye bad, goodbye hard, let's explore trauma, to
human,
like
me hate emotion.
Right? Yeah, to this is, goodbye is laughter, and goodbye is tears, and goodbye is everything that's kind of in between that, and it's the road's not traveled. So yeah, those kind of three areas I wanted to explore was, let's say, I'll take you for example. If you were to, move away, because goodbye doesn't have to be keel over and die or whatever. It could be, hopefully not.
Could be.
But if you were to, move away to New York and be like, fuck Emma, I'm never talking to her again, that's a goodbye.
It wouldn't be as personal, but I might move to New York.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That would mean there's probably never going to be another opportunity for us to act in a murder mystery together, or to, have a silly like video promo shoot, like over, some scrappy little shoot like in the basement, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a joy that I'm saying goodbye to. Like, I don't get to have like those moments of laughter with you ever again. And so that is a relinquishing of a joy. And I think when people think about goodbyes, that is front of mind, of course, because that's the most painful part is,
right.
Well, shoot, I don't get to do that again. And maybe, you could die tomorrow and I wouldn't know that this is the last time that like you got to make me laugh. And that's really heavy.
These were, and just to touch in this, these aren't, to talk about you like you aren't in the room.
Sure.
These are not just things that Emma is saying. These are also themes that were communicated with, again, trying to avoid this story. The characters in this story understood what Emma is saying right now. Mm-hmm. And in a way that Emma is communicating to me, like I am that person that the joy is being let go of. The characters tried to help the guests find that thing they're letting go of, to talk about it openly. Mm-hmm. That's a part of this immersive experience, and why I think it's important to touch on the heaviness of it, is that when you do a murder mystery or you do like a fun little like show up thing, a lot of it's just like, let's do some improv, and we can talk about the story here in that there's a scene where you play along with Emma's character, like with like little miniatures. There's a lot of that, but there's also, if you're willing, moments for you to be vulnerable and share your personal story. Mm-hmm. And in this letting go thing, we learned as the cast and crew, many things that people were letting go of. Mm-hmm. And just hearing that for a weekend is both the most precious and beautiful, and like, I'm so lucky that we got to be trusted like that.
Yeah.
It's also very heavy to hear so many people processing such difficult things in their life and then help them process it. You know?
And I'll also take that opportunity to say, and this is something I do feel really strongly about, is that immersive theater can never take the place of therapy. We're not
Thank you for saying that.
Trained mental health professionals. I think there is something really, really beautiful in creating a space where we as a community can hold and see one another.
Yep.
And I do believe in immersive theater as being a tool alongside other tools to see things in your life in a new way, or to explore things and emotions in a new way that maybe you didn't have a chance to before. Because I'm, Emma and David aren't running around with like, magical entities helping like guide us on a spiritual quest.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, and so I do think that processing traumas has to be done with tools that are more equipped than us, but I do, it does feel very precious and very sacred to be able to help people see things in a new way.
And I also want to touch on how unforced it was. Like, it wasn't like, you have come to share your traumas, do it. There was the space for you to do so. And that was like a communicated theme, is that like, we're saying goodbye to things.
Yeah. And
that might be, letting go of some stuff in your own life.
Yeah, I tried very hard to, I don't ever want to outright ask, what?
Who hurt you?
Who hurt you? Yeah.
Who hurt you?
Who hurt you? But, there's space to, in the way things are structured, if, this calls to mind something that feels relevant to a guest, that's amazing. I do think you probably could have gone through that whole experience and chosen not to be vulnerable and still like accepted the character's vulnerability and helped them.
And I think some did as well, right? Because there's also elements that I think we can touch on that is story-based, that isn't spoiler-based. Something that you told me is that you enjoyed incorporating the idea of playing.
Oh my God,
being
I love
playful.
Yes. Yeah.
So the miniatures scene was an opportunity for you to not like trauma dump or trauma bond.
Yeah.
But like, just play and have fun and give yourself permission to do that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
For sure, because and that was another part of this exploring. It's hard because the joys are the things that hurt the most to let go of, right? But in that, I wanted to create this moment of really reliving what those joys looked like, and I was like, how can I most authentically create a sense of play and like whimsy and laughter in this in this space, and that whole scene was actually based off. I mean, there's a couple of different things. Because we did multi-track, right?
Yep.
So mine was based off of the last time I had felt just like this, joy where I'm not worried about anything. It just felt completely childlike and playful. Was I went on this Easter egg hunt that was actually
Emma, not the character.
Not the character.
But just to quickly say, because you said multi-track, there are opportunities where you go with one character or the other, and have your one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So Emma's one-on-one was inspired by this.
Yes. Yeah. So American Immersion Theater does like an employees headquarters like Easter egg hunt every year. And this was actually before I was, full-time there, but they were leftover Easter eggs from their hunt they had done. And they kind of opened it up, because I was doing the director thing at the time, just the director thing at the time. They're like, yeah, if you can find the extras. I think there was like 25. So after rehearsal one night, I'm like, God damn it! I'm gonna find these eggs.
It is my job to find these Easter eggs.
So I zoomed around that space. I'm like looking under like desks. I'm like looking in cabinets. I found one in like a extra roll of like paper towels in the bathroom, and I remember like finding these little these Easter eggs and being like, oh my God, this is like
amazing,
so fun. And I'm like, okay, I just felt. Max is groaning again.
Those noises
He's like,
are so
Mom.
good. It is like, I've heard this before.
Yeah. But I'm like, oh, can I recapture that? And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's find weird little things in the space. Miniatures are whimsical and funny and cute. And I'm like, yeah, let's just hide them and we'll look for them together, and then we'll make a little scene just like we used to do when we're kids, right? When you're like playing pretend. And that is, for as much as I really, really appreciate and treasure the really vulnerable things people shared, seeing them play and like the little scenarios they came up with these stupid little miniatures was just so precious. Those are some of my favorite memories from the show, because you just got to see people just be present in a way that felt so full of joy.
And I have no interest in sharing some of those personal like moments of joy that everyone did.
Yeah.
But it was fun and funny to see how many people treated the miniatures in the exact same way.
It was fascinating, actually. Yeah.
You see themes of adults being like, this is the first time I've played with toys like this in a while, and they come back to the same narratives.
It was really, really interesting.
It's so cool. It was a good experiment, because I'm on the other side of the wall while she's having this moment. I've secretly dropped a camera in this corner or whatever, and I've got my phone, and I'm adjusting lights and stuff to like change as the scenes adjust and the tone shifts. But I'm also like, what are you doing with that miniature duck? It's a royal duck.
That little duck got so much love. I loved him.
Yeah.
And it was, oh gosh, I think one thing also that was just so I treasure so much in that scene was how much of the laughter was just genuine. Quinn and I were not forcing laughs in that scene.
No.
And that's what felt so good. I'm like, yes, like that's what I was trying to do is get people to a place where they're laughing just because they're present.
Can I say the character names?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, so sure. There's just 3 characters, and I was doing tech and media. There was Trinity, played by Emma, Farron, Ferren, Farren, played by Quinn, Quinn, and then the Archivist, played by, who was more of an omnipresent, like goddish, like
death personification.
Personification. So Trinity and Farron were human beings.
Yes.
Right?
Trinity's was not. Also, well, in that time,
spoiler. It's fine. It's fine. You didn't say anything spoilerish, right? You just, there's elements of not human to you.
It's a magical realism.
Yes. Okay, but you're interacting with Farron and Trinity as though they're just your human pals.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Yes.
And then, the Archivist is more of it's very clear. This is not your average tall person. This is a character, a figure.
Clear. Yeah.
So when you're interacting with Trinity, Trinity is giving you permission Trinity and Farron are giving you permission to take the charge on the miniatures. And so Emma and Quinn are just like, what are they doing? And they get to laugh along with it.
Yeah.
And when you're laughing under the character, that means the character's laughing along. So it's like, there were real, authentic moments that people were being funny. That's you don't even have to be the characters. You can just like participate.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the improv side of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, you know, even before the miniatures, that scene where we're just, you know, meeting these, you know, quote unquote neighbors for the first time, which is what the guests were playing, and we're making small talk, but in that small talk, leaving room for them to share whatever they care to share, and people are just funny.
You show up, we can say, you just show up. The reason that the story can continue is you show up, and it's a bit of a housewarming thing, right?
Housewarming, yeah.
Yeah, you've been invited to a housewarming. That's how the story kicks off.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I take you out of character, you're not in a character, up to your room, and then when you're down, story starts, thank you for coming to the housewarming, right?
I mean, there's a little bit of something.
I mean, there's backstory.
Yeah, sure.
But you know...
Going into that scene, you know that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The pretext for which this stuff is happening. So it's not just like... Because I imagine... I mean, I might have needed that context, like, before knowing all this stuff. Because, again, the world of immersive theater goes so much deeper than I could have ever known. And I know there's, like... It's a whole rabbit hole that we could spiral down.
Yeah.
But, like, because it is such a... Even though there is... maybe in the community that I'm just adjacent to, not necessarily part of yet. I mean, I'm becoming a part of the community.
Sure, absolutely.
It's such a malleable term, immersive theater, that like it could have, or immersive, yeah, it could have just been so many different things, but there was, for whatever flower giving moment, there was a good element of like, play, where you like feel like you're a participant in this, and I'm just here while this story's happening. Like, scenes that happen between Trinity and the Archivist. People are sitting in the chair just watching this. Like, they're not saying anything because, like, you're absorbing the story. And I think you touched on this at the beginning. There is some immersive experiences where you're just a part of it. You're just, like, there to witness it.
Yeah.
Right? But you've incorporated them being necessary to parts of it. While allowing, and I'm just rambling, I'm not saying anything that you don't know.
No, for sure. It was this element of like, and I love this idea because it fit this like magical realism. Like, we're at this, you know, crazy venue with these, you know, kind of larger than life characters of, there are moments of almost narration, kind of as this thread connecting these moments where the audience is dropped into these different scenarios or memories or opportunities to interact and drive the story forward. Right. So there was a 3-act thing, almost 4-act if you count the very end there, with those threads of just...
Should we keep secret? We keep secret.
We should. That thing I do think we keep secret.
I want to... Let's... I'm going to quickly clip this. By putting you on the spot, there, right before I hit record, you were just saying that you wanted to specifically talk about all of us individually, but also, one of the things that I want to... Unless it's personal enough that you would rather I didn't. Can we talk about the card that you gave me? The spider.
Oh my god, absolutely.
Okay, because you don't need to share what you gave to the other people. That is their space to do so. Maybe they'll do it on the podcast one day, Austin and Quinn. Let me make sure I'm actually recording so you can catch that. Yeah. But you gave... As we said our goodbyes, which, again, we're jumping around timeline-wise. Maybe we can talk about more of the stuff that happened at the castle. But timeline-wise, as we said our goodbyes, you gave each of us our own specific card, which we'll talk about the slight lore behind the cards in the first place before you talk about why you gave us. And then you told us a little bit about why you gave us the card.
Yeah.
And my card was the spider. So let's talk about the cards, because I think that is not spoiler enough, because you tell people that as a prologue, right? Like, about the cards. Sure, let's do it. Okay. Wait, you have the spiders. Okay, good.
Yeah, I have mine.
Oh, I got the spiders. Oh, my house is full of spiders. Your house isn't full of spiders.
Not this one.
This is just killing time. Oh, they're readily accessible. I don't even need to cut. Well, let's show the display. Let's show the back end.
Okay, yeah, so here's these guys. For the audio listeners, which is me most of the time, These are... it's an oracle card deck, which is it's not the same as tarot, but it's adjacent. Here's from my deck. And this was designed... So I designed this deck for the show, and the goal of it was to help build out some of that lore and that idea of there being more in this universe to explore. There are some cards in here that are callbacks to characters from Velveteen. There are cards in here that were used to explore lore in this show, and this is not going to be the last time guests are exposed to these if all goes well in storytelling.
So this is part of the multiverse.
It's part of the multiverse.
Interesting.
Yeah. So with these, at the beginning of this show, most everybody went through and had like a special oracle card reading, which had kind of the same vibes as a tarot card reading.
Done via Zoom?
Via Zoom.
Yep.
Set up my little studio. I used that altar that we used in Dissonance.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But the card I gave you was the spider, which is kind of one of these 3 core, and I won't get into the lore too much, but like entities that exist in this multiverse. Yes. Which is also funny, yes, because you are a Spider-Man in another life.
As part of the AI, I've talked about this on the podcast, but for first-time listeners or whatever, one of the other subsidiaries of the American Immersion Theory, and maybe the American Immersion Theory.
Yes.
Let's touch on that.
Yes.
The American Immersion Theater is the Princess Party Company.
Yes.
Of which there are many other characters like the Man of Spider. Mm-hmm. And the only work I've done for the Princess Party Company has been as Spider-Man.
Yes.
And then...
Which was a coincidence.
There was a coincidence?
It was a coincidence.
Because it was the first thing I thought of when you gave me the card.
That's
I was
funny.
aw, I'm the Spider-Man. And then you're like, oh, there's more to that. I was like, oh, tell me more. So, yes, the spider is the one that she gave to me.
So, and the thought behind that, that's not lore that we explored in this show, but the thought behind this creature, entity, whatever you want to call it, is that they are the ones who weave these webs of coincidence and synchronicity, and when you think about things like deja vu, in theory, in this magical realism world we're creating, they were the ones who orchestrated it. And so there's this thought that, I think about everything that you did behind the scenes.
Just to be clear, my capacity to absorb this upcoming information is low. So go ahead.
Okay. Noted. But yeah, I mean, both before performances, during performances, after performances, you just being this absolute glue holding things together. I could not have thought of a more perfect card. You were so much that you were just orchestrating and to make the magic happen. In addition to, because a big theme of this card and what we used it for in the readings was this nudge to pay more attention to maybe what the universe is trying to call you to be present in.
Oh, sure.
And very much trying to orchestrate this sense of like presence. And you also, as much as you were like a technical production glue, were very much a social glue as well. For everything that we, have gone into in this podcast, as far as things that were maybe a little bit less than ideal, but no unsolvable problems. I
want to touch on that after this, by the way, the no unsolvable problems thing.
You were, God, I mean, your energy was always up. You're always, positive. Not that you owed anybody positivity, sure, right? Like, but you were always such a great member of the team, and we couldn't have done it without you.
Well, thank you. I want to give my own little lore, a backstory, because going into this is not, traveling is not something I get to do often. Mm-hmm. So in order to make this happen, it was like, if you can cover my travel, like, that is all I need. Because experiences like this are like, I don't know, they're just, I don't want to slip into this like, woe is me, I'm poor thing. But woe is me, I'm so poor. And I'm saying that from a place of privilege in that I have made the sacrifice to work in this type of uncertain creative field. And so the experiences are what I live for. So like the only thing that kept my head above water was knowing that I got to do something I really wanted to do without being in crippling debt because of it. And so I've got to deflect your compliments and push them back at you. That wouldn't have been able to happen without you. So, like, yes, I appreciate that you were like, David could be the guy to help out. Let's bring David as a part of this. It could have been, it could have been anybody who follows directions well. Like, it could have. Because a lot of what I was doing isn't, even though we did media after the fact, and which I do feel like, yeah, I've got a little bit of expertise behind. A lot of it was following your directions, following your cues that were written into the script as part of like, because again, to touch on what I did a little bit, it was a lot of bulb changing, mood lighting, hiding, because the way that immersive theater happens is like, there's a scene happening here, so there's tech people changing stuff over here so that these people can get into this room, and then the tech person's got to go run around the building to get to this side and shift stuff around this side of the wall. So that's a lot of what that was. You made sure it wasn't just anybody, and I appreciate that. We cried all the tears.
Oh my god, so many.
I mean, I could of course get myself to be there, but I was, especially in that moment the whole time out there, I was just present in how like wild of an experience I was having, that I don't think I could have been anything other than as awake and energetic as I was. Like I'll accept your compliment and thank you. I was the way that I was because I was lucky to be there. So thank you very much for letting me be a part of that. Because like, and I talked to you about this while we were out there as well, that I'll do that again. I'll do that 100 million times. I'd also love to act in one of your shows.
I would also love to act, not to have you act. Because again, you as Joey, so fun and amazing. And that's a reference to Dissonance.
Yeah, which, scrap that episode. Screw that.
But yeah, and if it really the only reason you weren't is because financial resources are finite, and if I could have paid like 6 actors and like 3 tech people to be out there, would have loved that. But I'm like, I just really want David there. Like, how can we make this work?
Which I appreciate. Yeah. Because wow, to touch on some of the themes we've already talked about, what a team. And like, because of the heavy themes, I think we were all willing, and because of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes in our own personal lives, it was very difficult and stressful to talk about, and we won't talk about that on camera.
Sure.
But, like, we were going through it, kind of. Like, and to have that group validate your emotions on... Because let's be clear, the last show started at 11:30, which meant it wrapped by 1, which meant we were doing cleanup till about 3, which meant you were staying out until about later than that.
I do think reset on this show was pretty light.
It was less about reset and more about...
I think we were just processing.
Well, we also needed to... The story continued in the morning.
Yeah.
With the characters, like, as they wake up, continuing the story. So, like, we had to be up for that.
Yeah, we did have to be up to...
So it was less of, like, there was a reset, more of, like, logistically... The show couldn't have been done until... Work couldn't have been done until, like, 2:30, 3 o'clock. And then work had to start in the morning before they got up. So it's like, there was 4 or 5 days of 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Yeah. And so everyone was delirious. Everyone was emotional and vulnerable and, like, touched by the themes that everyone else was touching on around us, that, like... The group, just like any trip, any like beautiful, majestical experience, you bond with that group in a way that we'd never be able to communicate that on the podcast. Like what we felt, what we went through, what we shared. Like
words fall flat, I think.
Yeah, and you can't. And I kind of... There's a part of me that... Let's talk about the touchdown, the grounding that has been
that has been hard, that you can share your side of this in whatever capacity you feel is appropriate. When I got back, ooh, that was hard. It was really hard to just be like, yeah, I'm jet lagged and like whatever, I'm about to catch up on sleep. But there's this weird grounding reality of having the most beautiful, serene, life-changing creative experience. Now I'm back home.
Yeah.
Now I'm back home where all my stresses are, where like all my worries are. I'm back in touch with social media. And I love, even though I was sharing to social media because we had Wi-Fi out there, I wasn't scrolling social media. And I find myself when I get in those like, and I'm sorry if I'm dominating this part of the conversation,
No,
that
you're
like
good.
I get in these doom scroll moments where I'm no longer reading the things on my screen. I'm thinking of all the cool things I did and how I'll never get to do them again.
Yeah.
And that's not correct.
Right.
I will have amazing, fantastic experiences. But the grounding when you come back home from something like that, it's just a serotonin crash.
It's
that I
really
wonder
tough.
how you handled in some capacity when you got back.
Yeah, no, it was a rocky landing for me too. And you've been very respectful of this, and I'm not going to share too much. But there was the day before I left for Valediction, just some news that I got that fundamentally just changed my reality. And that was really tough. So coming back, it was weird because I was not coming back to the same place I left,
I also want to say, I'm sorry to do this.
No, it's for sure. You're good.
You texted the group before we all met up, too.
I texted all of you guys, I think, that morning.
To forewarn.
Yeah.
If you are
a little, I don't know, not grounded.
Something along the lines of like,
weedy.
If I'm crying and I'm very sensitive, here's why. It's all right. I'll handle it. Here's why.
Yeah.
And then there was a group effort behind the scenes to then be, how much do we talk to Emma about this?
Yeah.
You know?
And then it ended up being, we talked about it.
We talked about it.
Which was good. And I think... it
was your chance to talk about it.
For sure. Yeah. Not that,
It's okay.
Yeah. I did. That was good. And that was a very good thing. And I think something that, a couple things that were really good about that. One, I felt so held and cared for through that entire weekend that I don't feel like it touched that experience for me. Like this, Valediction gets to live in its own sacred little space. Oh man. And I don't have to reframe it like through the lens of having, learned this thing later, like it just got to exist as it was with the support of people I was with. And it happened in spite of it all. And I think that's huge. And so also I realize I'm vague booking right now, which is really obnoxious, but it just, all that to say, the landing was a little rocky coming back because it felt like, I was leaving one reality and coming back to one that was completely different, while also having been out doing something that felt like it was its own separate reality. And so it's just, that's a little destabilizing. And so
I don't want to share more than you're comfortable sharing. All of us, regardless of the weight of our experiences, the world that we were coming to back home, all of us cried. It was just a cry. So it was like, well, he's crying, I can cry. They're crying. We're all crying. It's fine. We can cry. You didn't until
the Phoenix Airport bathroom? Yeah. I'm like, oh God, I do this. This is such a pattern for me in immersive, especially, I'll go out, I'll do experiences that mean a lot to me. And I have a really tough time. It's not that I'm not present. I just think it doesn't quite hit until I'm out of that space. But yeah, I had a layover in Phoenix and I'm like, I should hit the restroom before I hop on this plane for 4 hours. And I'm sitting in the bathroom and I'm just sobbing, which is so.
The big cry hits you. It doesn't matter if you want it to or not.
Yeah, and then I got on the plane and I had to sit next to this woman, and I'm just like, just like facing the window, trying to like dab at my eyes, and it was in equal parts, I think, just like the weight of like what we had just done and who I was, who I had the opportunity to share that with, both with guests and with you guys, in addition to just, all the other life bullshit that was going on. So, and then I, fell asleep and woke up to turbulence and was like, oh, what's going on? But,
Tears in your eyes, like, I'm dying!
Yeah. But yeah, so that was, that's kind of when it all hit me. And being back has been weird. And it's also, it feels like, it's been 2 weeks since we've done this. It feels like it's been forever and also no time at all.
Wow.
And it's always weird because you are chasing that feeling again, but knowing that those sacred spaces only exist when you curate them and you take the time to like make them happen. And I think that's part of where that like itchiness to create again comes in. Is those opportunities are so rare to feel so human with other people that you just want to go out there and do it again, make it happen again. And I think we create small pockets of that in everyday life for sure. I don't know, call it escapism, call it creativity, call it whatever you will. But
I call it dissociation.
It was special, yeah. And it was hard to come back from it.
I will say, to pull a cherry on top of the consuming content loop that I've been stuck in, as of like maybe even yesterday, maybe it was the day before, it was a shout out to an artist that has recently, whatever, I'll frame it like this. Jake Frew on YouTube, Jakefrew, makes YouTube videos he touches on the themes that we all deal with and then makes a cool looking video out of it. So one of his most recent ones was do you know about the Call of the Void? Do you know what that is? Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar with it, basically there is this very human feeling that we all feel, or that I'm learning a lot of us feel, when you're like on the edge of a tall building or on the top of a mountain or whatever, the edge of a cliff. It has nothing to do with suicidal ideations or like emotions behind it, but there is this thought, I could jump right now. Mm-hmm. Like, in this moment, I am fully in control of my life. And those are the only moments that you're like really, like whatever there's, or that maybe it feels so powerful because it feels like the first time you're in control. Yeah. I could bring myself to jump off this ledge, but I do not. Mm-hmm. That is a choice. That is the call of the void, in that like we are in touch with our humanity in that moment when we have the power to stop it. That video, he made a video about that, as well as a video called Consume Like an Artist, that I've put two of these themes together literally, again, within the last 2 days. His Consume Like an Artist thing was just like, hey, if you're going to be stuck in these doom scrolling moments, you might as well be like looking at stuff you care about rather than memes. So it's like, I waste my time watching YouTube videos. I watch video podcasts, I do whatever. I should start listening to creative podcasters. I should start watching creative content. If I'm going to waste my time, I should be consuming like an artist rather than be consuming the news. Yeah. This call of the void, when I look at, maybe I'm just faux philosophically rambling here, but this is just a thought to maybe cap this, is that call of the void, because I'm no longer near any mountains, even though I was for a second. Yeah. That mountain is like my phone in front of me, in that I have a choice to pick up this phone. And for the first time in my life, I am aware that I am in control of pushing Instagram. Right. Or whatever distractive app. I'm going to use the phone. The mountain is there. I'm on top of the mountain for right now. But this first step down is consuming like an artist. And like using... So, sorry, this is a weird circular way to finally bring us back please. To... being out in the middle of nowhere so forced me to like get in touch with parts of my brain that like haven't been active for a while. Yeah. Like the not worrying about the likes or the views on the podcast because I took 3 weeks off of the podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe there is no way to tie these two things together. Check out Jake Frew on YouTube. I'm just saying, 2 themes to take away. Yeah. Get off your freaking phone. Like, that's what I'm doing. That's why I feel the way I feel since I've been back.
Yeah.
Is because I went from, you deserve a break, David. That was so heavy. Take a break. I'm stuck in the break.
Yeah.
I gotta get out of the break.
I feel that.
Get off the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not gonna, I need to start consuming content that inspires me so I can, once I finally do break free of that, start making the things.
Yeah.
One of those things I really want to make is a Valediction short film. So off camera, I want to talk this. Let's put it this way. Let's put a hard deadline on this podcast because I've got 5 minutes left on this clip. Seven minutes left on this clip. Oh, well, 6.5 the more I talk. Is there an openness to rebirth Valediction, or do you see an importance of letting it sit as a standalone thing?
I think it can exist however, I know, wherever the art takes it, right? I think, the art exists to make people explore their thoughts and feelings in a certain kind of way. If that takes the form of a short film, that's amazing. If it takes the form of a short story, that's amazing. If it's an immersive experience, again, while it also exists out there as a short film, that's cool. The art's alive in that way,
The reason I ask is just there is such an important overarching theme of the art of saying goodbye.
Yeah.
And yes, it can be a story that's told multiple times. Do you struggle in any capacity? And maybe I'm shooting ourselves in the foot by saying we got to stop here, but we should soonish. In just letting go of stories, letting go of creative experiences.
Yeah. That's a really interesting question, and I'll try my best to, I don't know.
It's fine. Continue. Go ahead.
I was thinking about this, and if I can bring up and shout out another creator here, Paralysis Immersive does some really great work. Quinn's a part of that.
Okay, if we're going to talk about Paralysis, let me clip this real fast.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yes, Quinn.
Yeah. So, their executive team is Sam Dela Cruz, David Higgins.
There goes Max.
And David Higgins, all 3 of whom I respect and love very, very dearly. But I was I acted in a project of theirs called Omega in last March. Yeah, so almost a year ago now. What is time, for real? Yeah. But I remember talking to David about, whether or not that story would ever be remounted, and that story meant a lot to me. I was very grateful to have been asked to be a part of it. I still feel changed by the story I had the opportunity to help tell. But I remember talking to David and he was expressing that, that I think there are some stories that we tell and then we let rest. And that always stuck with me because there was an element of this was so powerful and meaningful. I want to experience what I felt here again, almost selfishly. But I do think there is power in sometimes letting your art be a reflection of you and telling that and inviting people into this sacred space and letting that just exist. And so I do think about that with something like Valediction, where maybe we just created this little pocket of community and this little pocket of magic, and that just gets to, in its own ephemeral way, exist as something in this world that this small amount of people experience together and will hold together, and then that too is something we say goodbye to. And in its own meta way, we were trying to learn how to do that in the process, because there are always stories to tell, and always ways, and we're always changing, right? We were changed by that experience, so we wouldn't even be able to tell it quite in the same way.
Right. And that's kind of why I ask, I wonder, especially when we talk about what we came home to, or what we went out there to escape, or what we escaped while we were out there. You kind of said that there is it wasn't tainted by external forces. It was just this moment in time. So to continue the story is to, it's like it's like when a show goes on way too long. It's did you need to do that?
Yeah.
Or did you just want to do that? And I wonder, first of all, definitely I want to do it. I would love to, in some way, turn Valediction into a short film. But also, as the person who conceptualized the story, there's also a lot of extra vulnerability in rather than it being a one-on-one experience with some, tracks, you're now inviting anybody into it. Just anybody. So how do you feel about, I don't know, just, well, I don't know how to talk about that, especially if it might not happen, because it's more of just like a...
In terms of it being like a short film?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't think that bothers me, because when I think about, the writing of Valediction, it wasn't birthed out of this, like, I have something extremely personal happening that I need to reflect in my art. I think it was, this idea of saying goodbye and mortality and, kind of the fleeting nature of all things is on my mind often, but there wasn't like a thing that happened that I needed to process through this story. It's a space that's interesting to me, and I felt would be resonant to others. And so, however, that being said, there are always things happening in life. We learned that right before the show, that you can bring into the experience and draw from to help it feel more authentic as you are acting,
right.
Or to really make it more authentic when you are holding these things that people are sharing with you. But I don't feel that is something. Yeah, I mean, inviting more people into it in the form of a short film, I say that's amazing. The more the merrier, right? And they'll experience it in a different way, but it doesn't have to be the same thing, and I think that's okay.
Okay. Well, there you heard it, folks. For the first time, Valediction, the short film, theaters near you.
Yeah.
Eventually. No hard date. Let's go out on this. Because there's, I don't know, when you're done here, I might plug something at the end. But, recommendations, suggestions for people, content-wise, for people to consume after this to get an understanding of your interests. So, genres of music, and I'm pointing you in a direction. Particular things you've seen recently that you want to refer people to.
Oh, gosh.
Any recs?
Is there something specific you're trying to get
I'm just talking about how Emma has recently inspired a synthwave.
Oh, love synthwave. Yeah.
What sort of renaissance in my life? So just, I guess, recommend some artists or whatever.
Sure. I mean, this is separate from immersive theater, but I love
the Midnight. We're off immersive theater.
Yeah.
This is the hard left transition here.
Yeah. No, the Midnight, amazing band.
The Midnight. Okay.
Yeah, such a vibe. I think we were on the Midnight Radio on Spotify cleaning up after the show all day Monday, so it was a whole vibe.
There was a couple of times when I'd be like, because we're all exhausted and we realize we've got a 6-hour drive back, we're like packing stuff up, half like groggy. Every once in a while I hear a song, I'm like, Emma! What is this? It's the Midnight!
Yeah.
I'm adding it to my playlist!
and then you've been sending me some really good recs too.
Yeah. That's been fun.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Movies. Listen, I haven't had time to consume any visual content in a hot minute, because this has been a year of my life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been, when I'm not doing, American immersion stuff, I've been like, okay, I gotta work on Valediction, so.
Right.
It's been a minute.
That's kind of the consume like an artist thing.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to just watch. I haven't watched a movie in months.
Yeah.
I want to be a filmmaker. What am I doing? I'm just watching the news.
Right.
I love being informed. I really do. I gotta stop. I gotta let that stuff go. All I do is consume, and it's not like a guy on the couch sitting watching Fox News at home or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there are, I recently, maybe this is a dumb plug, but I recently made just a short little like vertical video of like the life of a drummer when you hear a click track stuck in your ear.
Uh-huh.
And there's just this constant like, and then when you leave practice, there's still that constant clicking.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a tinnitus thing. I don't know. But it's also like, your brain's used to hearing that same thing over and over and over again, and that's all I can... It's just like when a song gets stuck in your head.
Yeah.
I need new things stuck in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than the doom happening in the Middle East or in Ukraine or whatever, and rather than domestic politics. Just the politics, the news, the stuff that's irrelevant to my life, I need to just stop consuming because it's stuck in my head, and I don't have any more room for other shit. So I need to watch more films. Need to listen to more synthwave. And I need to eat more Indian food.
Yes.
The final cap here. Because unless you're...
Oh, no, I'm just fidgeting.
Okay.
It's the A.D.H.D. man.
Because I also... I didn't know if you were about to do the cards thing. I also want to shout out, before we wrap out one more time, the people who were part of the show. But before we do that, I stayed with my buddy Zach, who was episode number 4 of the podcast, I think. One of the first 4 guests was Zach L'Italian, who lives out in Los Angeles. Would not have been able to get there without him either, because he gave me a place to crash, picked me up places, gave me referrals for like how to get from point A to B using the flyaway bus nonsense. Very appreciative of Zach.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I bring that up? What was I saying?
Were you going to shout someone out?
I was going to shout something out, but
I was
talking
with the cards.
I was talking about whatever.
Consume like an artist. I picked
Whatever.
these up. You
It's
said,
gone.
I'm like, okay.
It's gone. Let's
Cool.
shout out one more time. Quinn Leary
Oh my gosh.
and
Quinn-
Austin Menard.
Quinn Leary. Oh wait, never mind. I don't know if I'm. Never mind. Quinn Leary's very talented. And catch him in whatever you can. Acting wise.
Does this have to do with your very vague... Maybe I shouldn't even talk about this. You said something along the lines of like...
Oh!
Somebody's... Okay.
Okay.
It is.
Cut
That answers that question.
Okay.
Okay. Quinn Leary and Austin Menard. Fantastic artists. Phenomenal actors.
Yeah.
Great actors.
Good people.
Great people.
Yeah.
You can... I don't know how to plug them personally. You're going to see Austin in a bunch of Netflix projects. Whether that's manifestation or projection or whatever.
Yeah.
I know he's got an acting... He's finally like at a point in his career where like he's meeting some people and doing some things. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like he's one of those faces you're going to see.
And he'll deserve it.
Which I found out. I think I told you, unless I told somebody else. Did I tell you the link to Austin where I know somebody who knows him?
Yeah,
my friend. My friend Patrick from out in New York worked with Austin. Austin is out in L.A. Patrick is out in Long Island, or Port Washington, whatever, New York City, for all intents and purposes. It's just wild to know people coast to coast who know each other and then be like, literally in the Midwest on either side of them, seeing. I mean, they're doing the thing. Austin's doing the thing. It's great to see. And Quinn, based out of Chicago.
Amazing. Phenomenal actor.
My God.
Yeah.
And his capacity to empathize with guests during that show.
Unreal.
So good.
Yeah.
There were many moments where... How do I avoid that spoiler? Where Quinn's character, Farron, is processing things alongside the character, or alongside the guests. And again, while a large part of this is script... most of it's improv, and a capacity for empathy and improv in those moments is like crucial to making those moments like land with people. And like Quinn was the person for that role. Great actor, great person, very empathetic, and huge, great. Sorry.
And like both of them to do it so like fully and presently and authentically for each person each night. I mean, it was never. I didn't see them. I mean, whether they felt it or not, it did not communicate I am having empathy fatigue. They were who they needed to be for each person each time, and that's incredible.
I don't think they would have any problems with me sharing that. Like sometimes they would walk away from one-on-one experiences and they'd have to like need a minute to like get some tears out of their eyes so they can't like...
Same.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's a hard 180. You know, like when you're dealing with such heavy themes or feelings or emotions, to turn on the actor, like that takes a good actor, not just a good person. So you guys, if you've made it all the way to the end here, we love you so much. You were a great group. Freaking
follow at Firefly Tapestry.
At Firefly Tapestry. Any other socials or media things you want to plug?
I am at Emma Storyteller. I think Quinn is at Quinn of Pentacles.
Quinn of Pentacles, I think. I don't know if there's underscores or any of that type of stuff.
And I think Austin is at Austin.Menard, perchance.
Follow our followers
listen,
and look up the first names.
They're doing really cool things.
Yep.
Everybody's doing really cool things, working
Yep.
on their own really cool projects.
Yep.
At fireflytapestry.com. If you want to, check out our website, join our email list. That's the best way to find out about upcoming stuff.
Also, I just want to be clear, not to put you on the spot, and I don't think you need one.
Sure.
You don't have a Facebook, do you, for that group?
I should.
I went to tag it, and I was like, oh, there's no Facebook.
No, I should just repost stuff. I just feel like there's like 2 people on Facebook.
I get it.
I don't know.
I get it.
Yeah.
Which is funny. We could go into a whole other rabbit hole about like, I know that is objectively true, and yet I still hate myself when the numbers are low. I'm like, nobody's interacting with my stuff. It's because nobody's on Facebook.
And it's like, this stuff's so visual. I'm like, Instagram just makes sense. I don't know. Facebook just feels like I'm doing it because I have to, and I don't know.
Although I am feeling that way about Instagram a lot more lately, which is why I really... Okay. Quick thing. We keep going longer. The thing I got stuck on was literally just me saying, Zach took me to get Indian food for the first time.
Oh!
And I had never had it until that moment. And that's all I've been able to think about since. So after this podcast is wrapped, I think we're going to go get some Indian food. But also, are you pulling something
I
up?
want to properly plug them. It is Quinn.of.Pentacles. And it is, hold on.
At David J. Mund on Instagram.
Austin_Menard. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
There's the plugs. Emma.
Cool.
At Emma Storyteller.
Yes.
And at Firefly Tapestry.
Correct.
And if this is just a manifestation, if anything, even if it's not plugging you in the right direction, I want to start telling stories on my YouTube channel again. This isn't like vlogs, but there's an element of vlog in that I'm not really talking script, but I'm shooting from the hip about an outline of a thing I'm going through. And then I shoot footage to fit that narrative.
Yeah.
I'm going to do more of that this year. That's all I'm trying to say.
Love that.
At David J. Mund. Rate and review the podcast. Follow the podcast at A.D.H.Deep-Dive podcast? Whatever, you'll find it. It's all in the link below. Shall we get some food?
Let's get some Indian food.
Is there anything else?
We love you.
I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Let's go freaking munch!